Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the historic peace deal in Colombia that was signed in Cartagena on Monday. Joining me now here in Washington is Gustau Alegret. He is a political correspondent and television anchor with the international news channel NTN 24. Joining us from Beijing is Jiang Shixue. He is a former deputy director of the Institute of Latin American Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome to both of you to the show. Gustau, let me start with you. What do you believe it will take for this peace deal to succeed? Are you hopeful that there will be a lasting peace now in Colombia?
I think it's a big step for Colombia and for Latin America. In my opinion, this deal is the end of the Cold War in the Western Hemisphere. There are other examples around the world that the Cold War is still on, like North Korea. But in Latin America, after the new era of relations between the United States and Cuba, that was the last chapter of this era. And it's going to transform radically Colombia and the region, because this has influence not only in Colombia, but in Venezuela and in Cuba. And for the left movement in the region, the FARC is disappearing. So now there is only one way, which is democracy and dialogue, not bullets. And yeah, the process is going to be difficult to implement. The Colombian society is divided, it's deeply divided. And we'll see what happens this coming Sunday when Colombians are going to vote. But it's historical, and it's going to transform not only Colombia, but the region as a whole.
Right, we'll get to that referendum this coming Sunday in a moment. But first, let me ask you about something you just mentioned, and that is transformation in Colombia. There was something very symbolic that took place at the signing ceremony. In fact, the pens that were used at the signing ceremony had an inscription on their side, and it said, "Bullets wrote our past, education our future." So what can we expect?
That was symbolic, but in my opinion, the most important part of that ceremony was when Timochenko, the head of the FARC, say sorry to the victims. And that was the major step in the process. And that moment, and the pen that they use, a bullet transformed into a pen, it's a symbolic transformation. So there is no more war, at least with the FARC, because we don't have to forget that there is other guerrillas in Colombia, like the Ejército de Liberación Nacional, which is another terrorist group that is still acting in the territory. So yeah, the guerrilla is, the FARC is the main one, but there are others in the region, and the government wants also to start conversation with them. The pen was symbolic, and I think everything in that ceremony was very thought. Every step, the color, who talked, what the character said, and it's a message to the Colombian society. Now starts a new era of Colombia.
Mr. Jiang, as Gustau points out, this is a historic deal in Colombia, the beginning of a new era, as he's just told us. How does China see this agreement?
Well, I would say that this is really a very good news for China. And to tell you the truth, personally, I've been to Colombia twice. Once to Cartagena and the other time to its capital. Well, when I was walking in the streets, I had a kind of a concern. Perhaps I was afraid that probably a bomb will explode on the roadside. So I was a little bit afraid of this kind of things. And now I think everybody in China will be very happy to hear about this piece of good news. And as you know, that Colombia is a very nice country. And the Chinese companies will be very happy to hear that. And also let me tell you that according to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, it says that China welcomes this kind of peace deal, and this peace deal will make some kind of contributions to the world peace and also development in the future. So China will be very happy to this kind of peace deal.
So Gustau, this war that lasted more than 50 years, a very bitter war that divided Colombia. Now, of course, the FARC will integrate into Colombian society. How difficult is that going to be?
Well, there are hundreds of thousands of victims, people who have died, families who remember the loss of one of their relatives. And when you're going to see the person who is responsible of that murder in your parliament, in your Senate, taking the stage and just saying something or addressing to the nation, how are you going to feel? I mean, this is a long process, this is a way, and this is only the beginning. There are questions about this peace process. What about the impunity? I mean, if you go to Colombia, to Bogota, to Cali, to Cartagena, and you kill someone, you get 10, 15, 20 years imprisoned. Someone who has committed crimes against humanity, killing children and women and men without any discrimination, they're going to get 8 years, 5 years, not only in a prison, but in a special area. And this is difficult for a society who has suffered a lot. And this is only one example of why critics inside the Colombian society believe that this is not a good agreement. In my opinion, it's the beginning. I mean, in the 21st century, there is no reason for a war. I mean, dialogue and try to understand the other, it's the way. No bullets, no violence, but dialogue. But yeah, the implementation process is, has some question marks that are reasonable. Yesterday I was talking with some people who participate directly with this Colombian process. And off the record, that person says, those questions are reasonable. We have to deal with them. I am in favor because I am part of the government, but the people who don't believe in this process, who has questions, they have some rights to believe that.
Because the FARC now becomes a political party. This is a guerrilla group that fought a war, now becoming a political party. And not just that, they are granted, what, 10 seats in parliament?
Yeah. And the question is, those seats are going to be granted for a period, for a certain period of time. And after that, it's the people who is going to vote. But what happened? There are certain areas in Colombia that are only controlled by the FARC. There is no institutionality. And the question is how those areas with citizens that they are going to vote and they are controlled by the FARC with no institutional structure in those areas are going to vote. Are they going to feel still the threat of the guerrilla around? Are they going to vote freely? And this is a question that it's fair to ask if you want to analyze the process. And after that period, society will be free to decide. But for a certain period of time, I don't remember how many years, those members of the FARC are going to have those seats for granted.
Mr. Jiang, you mentioned a moment ago that Chinese companies will be pleased at the outcome of these talks and the peace deal that has been signed. China already has pretty significant economic relations with Colombia. Now that this peace deal is a done deal, do you expect that relationship to expand significantly?
Oh, yes, definitely. You know, Colombia has lots of resources, and Chinese companies want to make all kinds of investment over there. And just as far as I can remember, that was the year 2011. 4 Chinese workers working for a Chinese oil company were kidnapped by a kind of a people which was believed to be FARC. And almost 1 year later, they were released. So you can see that Chinese companies are quite concerned about their safety. So now the deal is done. So Chinese companies will be very happy to make investment without any concern over their personal safety. So this is really a nice news.
Gustau, sorry, go ahead.
Not only Chinese, but other companies from the United States, from Europe, from Asia in general. So when you are thinking, you are a member of a board of a big company, and you're looking for new investments, and you look at Colombia, and Colombia is still a country in war, you think twice before accepting this or voting in favor of this investment. Now Colombia has no war. So not only Chinese companies are going to be interested, and this is going to increase the competitors for the same market, which is going to be good for the Colombian economy.
The next big thing that happens in Colombia, a referendum, as we've been saying, next Sunday. That's when the Colombian people will have their say on this peace deal. Do you expect it to be approved?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because rules have changed. The government changed the level of the minimum vote in favor in order to approve the peace deal. I mean, I think everything is set up in order to make this peace agreement approved by the Colombian society. The question is, how big is going to be the no? It's not going to be enough to win the referendum, but if it's big enough, and this is the expectation of the opposition to the peace agreement, it's a strong signal to the Colombian government to say, okay, it's approved, but watch out, because we are not really happy, or at least we are not as happy as you.
Does that make the implementation a little bit more difficult then?
Well, the opposition could grow. Juan Manuel Santos, the current president, is not going to be re-elected because the Constitution banned the second re-elections.
Yeah.
But let's see what happened with the next government. I mean, could be, is a possibility, that the one leader of the no movement, the opposition, could take the power. I mean, could win the elections. And then what happened? So it's difficult to go back once it's signed, and especially the international community is in favor of this process, as we saw those prime ministers and presidents of countries in Cartagena this week. But you can slow the process if you don't like it.
Still a lot of variables then.
Yes.